You wake up tired, not because you did too much, but because you spent your life leaking energy into places that never loved you back. You feel it in the chest first. A quiet pressure, a dull weight, as if something inside you is asking to be released. Most people think exhaustion comes from work, from effort, from struggle, but the truth is colder, more honest. You are tired because you are fighting wars that were never meant to be fought. You are tired because you argue with reality, because you replay conversations that are already dead, because you beg control from a world that does not belong to you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength, but you keep giving your strength away. You hand it to opinions, to expectations, to ghosts of people who moved on while you stayed behind, explaining yourself to silence. Energy is life, and life is sacred." The ancient samurai understood this. They did not waste motion. They did not waste breath. They did not swing the sword unless the moment demanded it. Every movement had purpose. Every stillness had meaning. But you fight shadows. You fight yesterday. You fight tomorrow. You fight the version of yourself that no longer exists, and each fight drains you. There is a quiet pain that comes from caring too much about things that cannot care back. You feel it when you refresh your phone, hoping for a message that never comes. You feel it when you rehearse your worth for an audience that is no longer listening. Seneca warned, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Yet imagination is where you bleed the most. You imagine rejection before it happens. You imagine failure before you begin. You imagine betrayal before trust even has a chance. And your body responds as if the wound is real. Heart racing, shoulders tight, breath shallow, energy wasted on illusions. The samurai trained their minds first, because a scattered mind loses before the blade is drawn. They knew this truth. Where attention goes, life follows. And you have been giving your attention to chaos. You wake up already tired because your mind never slept. You carry everyone's expectations like armor, but it was never forged for you. You say yes when your soul whispers no. You stay when your spirit is begging to leave. You call it loyalty. You call it loyalty. You call it love. You call it responsibility. But deep down, it is fear. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of being alone. Fear of disappointing people who never protected your peace. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." But you want approval more than freedom, so you perform, and performance is expensive. Every smile that lies, every silence that swallows truth, every moment you abandon yourself costs energy you never get back. The first samurai principle is restraint, not weakness, not passivity. Restraint, knowing when not to engage, knowing when silence is stronger than speech, knowing when walking away is the highest form of self-respect. You do not need to attend every argument you are invited to. You do not need to correct every misunderstanding. Some battles are beneath your spirit. A calm warrior does not rush to prove strength. Strength is assumed, but you keep explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, and each explanation takes something from you. Look at your life honestly. How much energy have you spent trying to be seen by those who look away? How much strength have you poured into relationships that only survived because you kept carrying them alone? You call it effort, but it is leakage, energy bleeding into the ground. Marcus Aurelius wrote in the dark, during war, during plague, during betrayal. And still he said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one, not convince, not explain, be." The second samurai principle is presence, total presence. A warrior who thinks about past wounds dies in the present moment. A warrior who fears the future hesitates, and hesitation kills. But your mind is rarely where your body is. You eat without tasting. You listen without hearing. You live without arriving. Your phone vibrates, and your nervous system obeys. Your attention is fractured into 1,000 pieces, and then you wonder why you feel empty. Energy cannot survive fragmentation. Peace requires wholeness. The Stoics trained themselves to return to now, again, and again, and again. Epictetus reminded his students, "Do not let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present. But you abandon the weapons you already have. You trade awareness for distraction, depth for noise, meaning for movement, and movement without direction is just exhaustion. Sit with yourself long enough, and the pain will speak, not to punish you, but to guide you. Pain is information. It tells you where your energy is being misused. That tightness in your chest, unspoken truth. That constant fatigue, misaligned priorities. That quiet sadness you can't explain. A life lived too far from your values. The samurai sharpen the sword daily, but they also sharpen the spirit. Because discipline is not punishment, it is devotion. Devotion to clarity, to alignment, to inner order. And inner order creates outer peace. The third samurai principle is acceptance, not resignation. Acceptance. Seeing reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. Most of your suffering comes from resistance. You resist endings, you resist change, you resist the truth because it demands transformation. Seneca wrote, "A man who suffers before it is necessary, suffers more than is necessary." But you argue with what already happened. You ask why instead of what now. You replay the moment life turned and you lost control, but control was never yours. Only response was. The samurai bowed to impermanence. They lived knowing every breath could be the last, not to create fear, but precision, love deeply, act cleanly, leave no unfinished integrity. When you accept reality, energy returns, because you stop pushing against the river and learn how to move with it. Acceptance does not mean liking what is. It means freeing yourself from the fantasy that it should have been different. And in that freedom, you reclaim power. Marcus Aurelius said it simply, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." But only if you stop resisting it. Your life is asking for less force and more alignment, less noise, more truth, less performance, more presence. When you stop wasting energy on what you cannot control, you will feel something unfamiliar. Lightness. Clarity, a quiet strength that does not need to announce itself. And for the first time in a long time, you will not feel like you are surviving. You will feel like you are standing still inside yourself. Unmoved by chaos. Unshaken by opinion. At peace with impermanence. You begin to notice the silence. At first it feels uncomfortable, because you are not used to being alone without distraction. The mind reaches for noise the way a drowning body reaches for air. But if you stay, if you do not run, the silence softens, and inside it something waits. Not motivation, not hype, not urgency. Truth. You realize how much of your life has been reaction. A look from someone, a word spoken carelessly, a memory triggered without warning, and suddenly your mood collapses, your energy drains, your direction bends. You have been living as if everything outside you has the right to move you. But the samurai were trained differently. They were trained to respond, not react. Reaction is instinct without wisdom. Response is instinct guided by clarity. Most of your energy disappears in that tiny gap you never notice. The moment between stimulus and choice. Someone disrespects you and your chest ignites. Someone ignores you and your mind spirals. Someone succeeds and your worth feels questioned. And in those moments, you give your power away. Epictetus spoke quietly, but his words cut deeper than any blade. It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. Your opinion is expensive. Your interpretation costs more energy than the event ever did. You replay the scene, change the dialogue, imagine different endings. And each replay is another strike against your own peace. The samurai did not rehearse defeat. They trained once, then trusted the training. But you do not trust yourself. You doubt your resilience. You doubt your capacity to endure. So you overthink. You overprepare. You overfeel. And exhaustion follows. There is a discipline in letting things pass, not indifference, not numbness. Discipline. The discipline to say, this does not require my life force. Not every thought deserves attention. Not every emotion deserves obedience. Some feelings are weather. They pass whether you worship them or not. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, you are not compelled to form any opinion about this. You have the power to wipe out this judgment now, but you cling to judgments because they make pain feel meaningful. You think suffering proves depth, that holding on makes you loyal, but suffering without wisdom is just damage. There is a difference between carrying a lesson and dragging a wound. Energy is restored when you learn the difference. You start to see it clearly now. The endless need to be understood is costing you peace. The need to be right is costing you connection. The need to be liked is costing you yourself. You do not need to shrink to be accepted. You do not need to harden to be strong. The samurai stood rooted because they knew who they were. Identity is grounding. When you know your values, you stop negotiating your soul. When you know your direction, Distractions lose their grip. You cannot control how others move, but you can choose where you stand. And standing still is not weakness. It is mastery. There's a moment when you stop chasing clarity, and clarity comes to you. It arrives quietly, without ceremony. A simple understanding. I do not need to fight everything. I do not need to fix everyone. I do not need to prove my worth to a world that cannot measure it. Seneca wrote, "He is most powerful who has himself in his own power." And for the first time, you feel what that means. Your breath slows, your shoulders drop. You stop bracing for impact. You begin to live from the inside out instead of the outside in. Your energy no longer leaks through unnecessary doors. You become selective. Selective with time. Selective with attention. Selective with emotion. Not because you care less, but because you care wisely. You stop answering every call that interrupts your inner order. You stop revisiting places that cost you peace. You stop explaining boundaries to people who benefit from crossing them. And something unexpected happens. You feel lighter without feeling empty, stronger without being aggressive, present without being tense. The samurai did not chase calm, they practiced alignment. Calm was the result. And now you understand, energy is not built by doing more. It is preserved by doing what matters. The rest falls away naturally. There will still be pain, still loss, still moments that cut deep, but you will meet them differently. Not with panic, not with resistance, with steadiness, with the quiet confidence that whatever arrives, you will remain intact. Because you are no longer at war with reality. You are walking with it, and in that walk, there is peace, not loud peace, not dramatic peace. A grounded peace that does not need permission. You start to feel the difference in the smallest moments. Not when everything is perfect, but when it isn't. A delay, a misunderstanding, a sudden change of plan. The old you would tense, brace, spill energy trying to control the uncontrollable. But now, there is a pause. A breath that arrives before the reaction. And inside that breath, choice. This is where mastery lives. Not in force, but in timing. The samurai called this ma, the space between movements, the silence that decides everything. You begin to respect that space. You stop rushing to fill it with noise. You let it teach you, because clarity does not shout, it waits. Most people never hear it because they are addicted to urgency. They confuse speed with progress, pressure with purpose. But you are learning that urgency is often fear in disguise, fear of missing out, fear of being left behind, fear of sitting still long enough to face what's true. Marcus Aurelius warned himself, "Do not hurry this matter. Do not suppose that you are harmed, and you will not be harmed. But you have been living as if every moment is an emergency. An emergency drains the soul. When everything feels critical, nothing feels meaningful. Energy returns when you slow down enough to feel again, not overwhelm. Feeling. The difference matters. You begin to notice how often you abandon the present to chase an imagined future. A future where you are finally enough, finally respected, finally safe. But safety is not in the future, it is in alignment. Seneca wrote, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. Yet you postpone peace like it is a reward instead of a practice." The samurai did not delay presence. They treated each moment as complete. Because incompletion is a mental habit. You can stand in sunlight and still feel cold if your mind is elsewhere. So you return, again and again, to the body, to the breath, to the weight of your feet on the ground. You stop escaping discomfort and start listening to it. Discomfort becomes a teacher instead of a threat. It tells you when something is misaligned, when you are forcing, when you are betraying yourself quietly. Energy is lost every time you ignore that signal. You begin to honor it. You choose fewer things, but you choose them fully. You speak less but with precision. You move slower but with intent. The samurai believed that a single clean strike was better than 1,000 wild swings. Your life becomes that strike. Focused, intentional, clean. You stop multitasking your existence. Because divided attention creates divided outcomes, you notice how often your mind tries to drag you backward. Old conversations, old regrets, old versions of you that no longer live here. You thank them and let them go. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly, not as a threat, as liberation. You do not owe your past a future. You owe your future presence. And presence is costly only at first, then it becomes nourishing. Your energy stops scattering because you are no longer everywhere. You are here, and here is enough. There is a quiet joy that emerges when you stop chasing intensity. It is not excitement, it is steadiness, a sense of being rooted while the world moves around you. This is not detachment from life. It is deeper engagement. You laugh more honestly. You listen without planning replies. You feel pain without letting it define you. Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. And slowly, without force, you become that person. Not perfect, but integrated. Not invincible, but unfragmented. Energy flows where resistance ends. And now, you are no longer wasting it. You are living with it. You begin to understand something subtle, something most people never notice. Energy is not only lost through struggle, it is lost through avoidance. The things you refuse to face do not disappear. They wait. They linger in the body, in the breath, in the background hum of anxiety that never fully leaves. You call it stress. You call it mood. But it is unfinished attention. The samurai did not turn away from what frightened them. They turned toward it, calmly, directly, without drama. Because fear feeds on distance. The closer you stand to truth, the smaller fear becomes. You have been running from conversations that needed to happen, from decisions that demanded courage, from versions of yourself that required responsibility. And the running has cost you more energy than the confrontation ever would. Seneca wrote, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality." Avoidance is imagination unchecked. You picture disaster, rejection, loss, so you delay. But delay has a price. It turns clarity into confusion. It turns choice into burden. And the longer you wait, the heavier it feels. Energy returns the moment you decide. Not when the outcome is perfect, but when the direction is clear. The samurai stepped forward, knowing the strike might fail. What mattered was commitment. Half movement is exhausting. Half truth is exhausting. Half living drains the soul. You feel it when you live in maybe, in someday, in almost. Your nervous system never rests because it never knows where you stand. So you choose. You choose honesty over harmony. You choose alignment over approval. You choose the discomfort that leads somewhere over the comfort that leads nowhere. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Simplicity is powerful. You stop complicating your life with exceptions to your values. You stop making excuses for behavior that cost you peace, and slowly, your inner world organizes itself. Energy begins to feel clean again. Not frantic, not forced, clean. You sleep deeper, not longer, deeper. You wake without the same weight on your chest. Your body notices before your mind does. Because the body always knows when you are aligned. The samurai trusted this. They listened to the body as a compass. Tension meant misalignment. Calm meant readiness. You begin to listen too. You stop calling intuition irrational. You realize it is simply information without language. You no longer numb discomfort immediately. You sit with it long enough to hear what it is asking for. Sometimes it asks for rest. Sometimes for boundaries. Sometimes for change. And when you respond, energy stops screaming. It no longer needs to. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Mastery does not mean control of everything. It means responsibility for response. You stop blaming circumstances for states of mind you can influence, not with force, with discipline, with honesty, with presence. You begin to see life not as something happening to you, but something happening through you. And that shift changes everything. You are no longer a container for chaos. You are a filter. What enters is chosen. What stays is intentional. And because of that, you feel strong again. Not the loud strength of dominance, the quiet strength of stability. The kind that does not need validation. The kind that remains even when no one is watching. You realize now that energy is not something you find. It is something you stop wasting. And as you waste less, you become more.